Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by asking you a question that might shake you a little. What if everything you've been taught about money, wealth, and success was incomplete or worse? Flat out wrong? See, most people are living by a set of financial rules that were designed not to make them free, but to keep them dependent. And that's why today I want to share with you a powerful conversation I had with my friend, best-selling author Garrett Gunderson. Because when you hear his insights through the lens of wealth creation, legacy building, and true financial freedom, you're going to start asking yourself, why not me? Why not now? When we talk about wealth, most people immediately think about the number in their bank account, the digits on their paycheck, or the material possessions they can point to as proof of success. But let me challenge you with a question that cuts deeper than dollars and cents. What if the only thing standing between you and the life of abundance you desire is the size of your belief system? Because here's the truth that very few are willing to confront. You don't live at the level of your potential, you live at the level of your belief. Imagine walking up to the edge of the ocean, waves crashing, limitless water stretching beyond the horizon, and you bend down to scoop it up. But instead of a bucket, instead of a barrel, all you've brought with you is a tiny thimble. The ocean doesn't lack. The ocean isn't limited. The limitation is the container you brought to it. That's the picture of most people's financial lives. The universe is overflowing with opportunity, but your container, your belief system, determines how much you actually take home. And here's where the hook comes in. The reason you might feel stuck financially or trapped in the same cycle of just getting by is not because the opportunity isn't there. It's because your beliefs have created a container too small to hold more. Think about how many times you've told yourself, I'm not good with money, or I don't deserve wealth, or people like me can't get ahead. Those aren't statements of fact. They're self-imposed limits. And as long as you carry those limits into the marketplace of life, you'll keep dipping a thimble into an ocean of abundance. That's why it's not enough to just learn new strategies. If you don't expand your mindset, if you don't upgrade the size of your container, all the strategies in the world will just flow right out of you. Now, let me make it real. When I was first starting out, I didn't have the resources or the knowledge that I have today. But what I did have was a conviction that I could grow into more than what my circumstances were telling me. And that conviction was the seed that allowed me to build capacity. You don't need to see the entire staircase before you take the first step. What you need is to decide that your old container is too small for the destiny God placed inside of you. You need to trade in your thimble for a bucket and eventually trade that bucket for a barrel and eventually trade that barrel for a pipeline. That's how belief works. It grows, it stretches, it multiplies. Here's the mistake so many people make. They think belief is some abstract, intangible thing. But belief shows up in how you act, in what you pursue, in the risks you take, and in the opportunities you either embrace or ignore. If you believe the world is scarce, you won't invest. You won't create, you won't take action. Because you're afraid there won't be enough. But if you believe that abundance is everywhere, you'll move boldly, you'll take steps others are too afraid to take, and you'll attract opportunities most people never see. Your belief system is the thermostat of your life. It sets the temperature of how much you can handle. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you stretched your container? When was the last time you deliberately put yourself in a position where your current level of belief wasn't enough, so you had to grow? Because if you've been comfortable, if you've been operating inside the same small circle of belief for years, then don't be surprised if your results haven't changed. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. Abundance doesn't flow into a thimble. If you want more, you have to become more. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to have everything figured out today. All you need to do is make the decision that the old container won't cut it anymore. Decide that your belief about money, about wealth, about your own worth needs an upgrade. Speak differently about yourself. Think differently about your opportunities. Surround yourself with people whose containers are bigger than yours so that their belief system stretches your own. Because once you expand that container, once you upgrade your belief, the same ocean that looked overwhelming before will now look like an endless supply. And you'll finally realize the truth. It was never about the ocean being too small. It was always about your container not being big enough. Let me ask you something that may sting for a moment, but has the power to shift everything in your financial life. Do you honestly believe you get paid for how hard you work? Because if you do, that belief has been keeping you trapped in the very cycle you're trying to escape. Look around and you'll see evidence everywhere. The hardest working people are not always the wealthiest. In fact, some of the hardest working individuals, those sweating on construction sites, those pulling double shifts, those working multiple jobs just to make ends meet, are the ones struggling the most. Does that mean their effort is worthless? Absolutely not. It means effort alone is not the currency of wealth. The marketplace does not reward effort, it rewards value. And the sooner you internalize that truth, the sooner you'll stop trading your life away for pennies on the dollar. Here's the hook that changes everything. Your income is a direct reflection of the value you create, not the hours you clock. Think about it. A heart surgeon can perform a procedure in 3 hours and earn more than someone working 3 months at minimum wage. Is it because the surgeon works harder? No. It's because the surgeon's specialized skill creates immense value for the patient whose life is on the line. Wealth follows value, not sweat. So the question you should be asking yourself is not, how can I work harder? But how can I make myself more valuable? That single shift in thinking can open doors that grinding harder never will. Now let's make this real. Most people are trapped in the mindset of trading time for money. They believe if they can just work more hours, if they can just grind harder, somehow wealth will show up. But here's the truth. There are only 24 hours in a day, and no matter how hard you grind, you can't stretch the clock. Value creation on the other hand, has no such limit. When you write a book, record a course, design a product, or build a system that solves problems for people, you can get paid over and over again without being physically present every single time. That's value multiplying itself. That's leverage. And leverage is where wealth begins. I remember a conversation where Garrett Gunderson said something profound. If money is the result of value creation, then poverty is not the absence of effort, it's the absence of value. That hit me hard because it explains why so many people can work their whole lives and still come up short. They've been conditioned to focus on effort, not outcomes. They've been trained to measure their worth in hours, not in impact. And as long as you stay in that trap, your ceiling will always be low. So here's the challenge. Start identifying the problems you can solve that others cannot or will not. Problems are opportunities in disguise. The bigger the problem you solve, the more valuable you become and the more wealth you attract. Think about Uber. They didn't work harder than taxi companies. They solved a problem: convenience, accessibility, and efficiency. Think about Airbnb. They didn't build hotels. They created a platform that solved the problem of unused space and unmet demand. Value creation is not about labor. It's about innovation, imagination, and serving people in ways they didn't even know they needed. And let's be honest, this shift isn't just about money. It's about freedom. When you start creating value, instead of just trading time, you begin reclaiming your life. You start buying back your time. You begin to experience what it feels like to wake up in the morning with choices, with options, with the ability to say yes or no, not based on a paycheck, but based on purpose. That's when money becomes a tool instead of a master. That's when wealth stops being something you chase and becomes something that chases you. So let me leave you with this question. What value are you prepared to create that will outlive your labor? Because until you answer that, you'll always be stuck in the grind, always believing the myth that working harder is the key to freedom. But once you answer it, once you commit to becoming a person of extraordinary value, you'll discover that wealth was never about effort. It was always about impact. And the moment you step into that truth, you'll stop chasing money and start creating the kind of value that makes money chase you. How many times have you heard people say, I just need to cut back, save more, and tighten my belt so I can finally get ahead? It sounds responsible. It sounds disciplined. But let me give you the truth that almost no one tells you. You cannot shrink your way into greatness. You cannot downsize your dreams and expect to walk into abundance. You cannot cut back on your future and expect to grow into your potential. And yet, this is the lie so many people are living under. They believe the pathway to wealth is about deprivation instead of expansion, about reducing instead of creating. That mindset is the silent killer of destiny. And unless you confront it, you'll keep living a smaller life than you were designed to live. Here's the hook that will challenge you. Every time you decide to shrink, you reinforce scarcity. Every time you tell yourself you need to cut down instead of grow up, you're training your mind to believe that life is limited, that resources are scarce, that opportunities are running out. And when you live in that kind of scarcity mindset, you'll never see the possibilities right in front of you. Think about it. When was the last time you heard of someone becoming wealthy because they clipped coupons for 30 years? Saving has its place, but saving will not make you rich. Creation will. Multiplication will. Expansion will. Garrett Gunderson once said, "You can't save your way to wealth, but you can serve your way to wealth." That hit me hard because it captures the essence of what greatness demands. Greatness requires you to expand, to stretch, to step into rooms bigger than your current capacity. It asks you to create more value, not less. Yet, so many people live their lives trying to shrink their way to safety. They cut back on dreams, cut back on vision, cut back on risk, and they end up cutting back on destiny itself. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a tree that refuses to grow because it's afraid its branches might break. Imagine a seed that refuses to sprout because it's afraid of the pressure of the soil. That would sound absurd, right? But that's exactly what people do when they shrink in the face of fear. They were designed to expand, to bear fruit, to reach higher, but instead they hide, conserve, and retreat. And then they wonder why abundance feels out of reach. Abundance doesn't come to those who shrink, it comes to those who expand. Now, I'm not telling you to be reckless. I'm telling you to be bold. There's a difference. Shrinking is driven by fear. Expanding is driven by vision. When you shrink, you protect what little you have. But when you expand, you position yourself for multiplication. Think about businesses that thrive. Amazon didn't get to where it is by shrinking its vision. Tesla didn't transform industries by playing it safe. These companies leaned into expansion even when others thought they were crazy. And the same principle applies to your life. You don't need to start with billions to expand. You need to start with a mindset that refuses to settle for less. And let me tell you something personal. Every major breakthrough in my life came at the exact moment when shrinking felt safer, but expanding was the only path forward. I could have cut back. I could have played small. I could have stayed comfortable. But I realized comfort was the enemy of calling. Shrinking may feel safe, but it robs you of the future you were meant to live. Growth requires risk, but it also produces reward. So let me ask you this. What dream have you been cutting back on because you're afraid of failure? What opportunity have you been shrinking away from because you don't think you're ready? What vision have you downsized to fit into your current resources instead of expanding your resources to fit your vision? Those are the very areas where expansion is calling your name. The truth is simple. Shrinking might keep you safe for a moment, but it will never make you great. Safety doesn't build empires. Comfort doesn't leave legacies. Playing small doesn't create impact. Expansion does. Growth does. Boldness does. And until you embrace that, you'll keep wondering why abundance feels like it belongs to someone else. But the moment you decide that shrinking is no longer an option, you unlock the door to a level of greatness that was waiting on you all along. So many people are waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect set of circumstances before they start pursuing their dreams. And that is why their dreams keep slipping further and further away. They convince themselves that once they have more money, once they have more knowledge, once they have the right connections, then they'll finally begin. But here's the truth you need to wrestle with. You don't need to have it all to start. You just need to start with what you have. Waiting for perfection is nothing more than fear wearing a mask of wisdom. And fear, if left unchecked, will rob you of every opportunity you were meant to seize. The greatest breakthroughs are never born out of perfect conditions. They are born out of courageous beginnings. Here's the hook that should grab you by the soul. You don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great. Every master was once a beginner. Every wealthy individual you admire, every leader you respect, every innovator you study, they all began with uncertainty, with doubts, with limited resources. The difference is they refused to let their starting point become their stopping point. They took a step, then another, and another, until momentum began to carry them into the future they once only imagined. Momentum is a powerful ally, but momentum doesn't show up until you move. Think about it. How many people go to their graves with untapped potential simply because they never started? They kept waiting for clarity when clarity only comes through action. They kept waiting for confidence when confidence only grows through doing. They kept waiting for resources when resources only show up for those bold enough to move without them. The world is filled with people sitting on ideas that could change industries, on gifts that could change lives, on visions that could change legacies, but they are trapped by hesitation. And hesitation, over time, becomes regret. I remember one of the most profound lessons Garrett Gunderson emphasized: you cannot create wealth by waiting for certainty. You create it by stepping into uncertainty with courage. That struck me because it perfectly describes the posture of every entrepreneur, every innovator, every builder. They didn't know if it would work. They didn't know if they would succeed. They didn't know if they would fail spectacularly. But they knew this staying still guaranteed nothing. Moving forward guaranteed at least growth, and growth is the soil where greatness takes root. So let me make this personal for you. What have you been putting off because you're waiting for the right time? Maybe it's writing that book, starting that business, making that investment, or having that conversation that could change your life. You keep telling yourself, I'll do it when, but deep down you know there will never be a when. The time is not someday. The time is today. The perfect moment you're waiting for is a myth, but the opportunity of now is real. Understand this: greatness doesn't come in one giant leap. It comes in small, consistent steps. Nobody expects you to leap from where you are to the finish line in one motion. But the universe does expect you to move. Take the first step, no matter how small, and watch how doors begin to open that you couldn't see before. Action creates clarity. Movement reveals pathways that sitting still will never uncover. And here's what's powerful. When you start, you send a message to yourself and to the world that you believe in your future more than you fear your present. You declare that your vision matters, your calling matters, and your destiny matters. And that kind of faith has a way of attracting resources, mentors, and opportunities that you never would have encountered if you stayed frozen in place. So let me challenge you with this thought. The person you're destined to become is waiting on the other side of the decision you've been postponing. Every day you delay, you push that destiny further away. But the day you decide to start, right where you are with what you have, that's the day everything begins to shift. Don't let fear disguise itself as preparation. Don't let perfection rob you of progress. Begin now, because the rest of your life will thank you for the step you take today.